Well, hello and welcome to episode 46 of It's Never Sunny in Seattle, a Seattle Mariners podcast. I'm Evan James, joined today by Michael Ahedo and Anders Jorstad. The Mariners are in Canada this afternoon, getting beat by Yusei Kikuchi and the Toronto Blue Jays after taking 203 games from the Mets over the weekend. It's been quite a ride so far, honestly, this season, and I'm glad we get to talk about it today because there are a couple of interesting developments. Since we last talked, Jared Kelenic was demoted. Obviously, we've gotten to see George Kirby pitch. But I think because we were chuckling about it before the podcast, I'll start off with Jerry's interesting comments on Kyle Lewis's recovery. So last Thursday, Jerry was talking about the demotion of Jared and kind of the reasoning behind that and some of the thought process. So that interview started off pretty negative. You know, like the general tone of it was, oh, we had to send this kid down. He's, not performing well. We're getting him a life preserver, I believe is the phrase that was used more than once. So after that, you kind of you swallow the medicine first, and then you tee him up with a softball question. So Mike Salk tees up Jerry and says, "Oh yeah, so all that's pretty bad, but Kyle Lewis's recovery is sure going well, isn't it? We should see him pretty soon." And Jerry took a deep breath and said, Kyle's recovery it's going real mercurial. He hasn't bounced back like we would have hoped, and I don't know about anyone else, but that sounded horrible to me. It was just not the cadence, the tone, the word choice I was hoping for. Kyle's feeling great hitting home runs. Mercurial, for those who don't use this word frequently, has a pretty specific negative connotation, as in like it's not going well and we're confused. None of that sounds good to me. Anyways, I'm going to kick it over to Mikey first, because we talked a little bit last week about Jared, who is now sent down, and I believe will be playing tomorrow for the first time, Tuesday night with the Rainiers. Will take his first at bats. Had a day off, catch his breath, kind of take a breather after the struggles he's had this season. But Mikey, give us kind of a breakdown of what you saw from those last couple of at bats from Jared, because it looked like he had been changing things really all the way up until the demotion. And what are you maybe looking for to get him back here?
He had some interesting comments maybe a week or two ago about, I think as a player, when you tinker a lot, you run the risk, if you're tinkering because the results aren't there, you run the risk of like over tinkering, where every time you go 0 for 7, over a 2-game span, you tinker and you move the position of your hands, or you open up your stance a little bit, whatever it may be. Jared essentially said that he doesn't really allow himself to do that. He will kind of stick with one setup for, like 2 weeks at a time. And the one that he, kind of reverted to, I guess, that he had for the past couple weeks, it did look better, but I think in terms of vertical bat angle, so getting a steeper angle to the ball, when you're making contact in relation to the ground, that his hand movement, he looks to be more in sync, but he just doesn't look good. He just looks really overmatched, or looked. So I think it's a good call to send him down. I think he needs kind of a reset. I think something that's getting lost just in the commotion, I guess, is that he's really young. So, we act like it's like the end of the world that he's really, really struggled for, 2 really partial seasons. He's 22. So, obviously it's anecdotal, but there are players that didn't figure it out till they're like 29, like Nelson Cruz. So I don't know. I was encouraged, but I think he really needs to settle on something that works for him, and find a setup that he can really stick with, and that's effective for him, which is like duh. But a lot of this, I think, boils down to confidence. Like, aside from swinging through pitches and maybe, not seeing breaking stuff so well, I think a lot of it just boils down to like his belief, that he's going to fucking hit a ball really hard.
There's also the fact that there's a lot of previous top hitting prospects around the same time that Jared was a top hitting prospect who are not doing well right now. Like Joe Adell got sent back down to AAA. Gavin Lux is not hitting well at all. Those guys were both the number 2 overall prospect at one point. So they were actually higher ranked than Jared ever was. I think Jared got up to 3 or 4. And then you got Alex Kirilloff is struggling. So there's a lot of players that are just not having a good time right now. And I think we're all tired of comparing to Jared other players. I know Evan is just like, Evan, I've seen you in the replies of people on Twitter. Evan is just like absolutely done with it.
It was one person. But yeah.
I think we're all kind of like sick of like hearing like, oh, well, X player did this at the same age, like, or whatever. But it does still paint a picture of like what Jared is doing is not uniquely bad, but that doesn't necessarily make it good, right? Like other players have struggled in the past and never came back from it. You know, just because other players have struggled before doesn't mean that he will. It also doesn't mean that he won't. We just don't know. But there's very little predictive value you can get out of one other person, specifically because every person is different, but also mentally has a lot to do with it. And we have no idea what his mental state is like compared to Byron Buxton, for instance.
Dumb.
They're just totally different players.
I actually had an R&D analyst slide my DMs and say, like Gavin Lux, like you said, struggled for really 3 years, like wasn't even an average hitter for 3 years. And now he's
bad
just
again now.
No, he's been average.
Okay, well, he hasn't been what they thought he would be.
Yeah, but he's 24. So I'm just saying, like, a lot of guys are, I think, increasingly ready once, they get to the bigs, like whatever age. They're generally ready and they're generally near their peak, which is, goes against what we've historically said about guys who are like 28 to 31, like that being their peak. I think it is a reasonable comp, and it probably will just take Jared a little bit of time. That his talent doesn't just go away, unless there's something like even just seeing breaking balls, it's different in the minors. That would have been exposed more. That would have been more on our radar coming in to, 2020, 2021. So I'm actually like, I think it's really easy to get caught up in all this and lose sight of he is super young. He doesn't even have a full season of at-bats. And this happens all the time. Like, if he would have come in and raked, it would have been, kind of a surprise. So
I think back to Joe's tweet a couple of nights ago about like the rookies, both in the American League, but largely in all of MLB, and just how much they're struggling, to Durr's point, which is that none of them are doing very well right now. And actually, if you look at Joe's tweet, Julio Rodriguez is doing the best. So I prefer to interpret that tweet as his early Julio for Rookie of the Year, like bandwagon stuff. That's not how he meant it, but
there was another AL West rookie who's playing really well. Just so you know.
Oh yes, this is true. There's a shortstop in Houston who seems like it will be a thorn in all of our sides forever.
So this is a little internal thing here, but when Lookout Landing did the predictions for all the award winners, every staff member except for me had Julio as American League Rookie of the Year, and my pick was Jeremy Pena. And now every time he does anything, people yell at me.
Does it feel good to be a traitor, Durs? Does it feel good?
It feels good to be right. I'll tell you that.
I was gonna say. I mean, to be the lone he has double Julio's WAR right now, so yeah, that's a pretty good call.
Yeah. Flowers for that one, Durs, but it's early. It's early days yet. It's early days. I will say, to the comps, and like the reason I'm kind of done with the comps for Jared is that a lot of there's two kinds of comps you can do. One is comps for players who are similar in terms of age and experience, and the other is comps that are straight up like, what are other people who have similar statistics look like? And a lot of the Jared comps for like, oh, he has these many plate appearances before his 22nd birthday or whatever, like whatever the cutoff was when people were showing us those statistics, those players were not remotely similar to Jared in any facet. Really, they were different positions. They were, they're different athletically. They don't have any kind of similar hitting profiles. They weren't even the same age in most cases. Like there were some 25-year-olds on there. It was like none of this has anything to do with anything. So I understand when people are doing comps like that. What they're saying is, hey, Jared is, like you said, Mikey, like you said, Durs, he's 22 and he has 470 plate appearances in the major leagues. That's really good. We would take that. Like, regardless of how he's actually played, that's good development. That's a guy who's getting in his licks. So that's great. But besides that, as far as anything relates to him, it's on him. He's a test case of one. Statistics don't matter to the individual, is the phrase. And he's got to prove it. He's got to go find his confidence again, get back up here and get back to being that guy. Because we've seen flashes of it. Even a week ago, he hits the hustle doubles, kind of like Julio does. He has great plays defensively in the outfield. All that, like you said, all the pieces are still here. He has not lost any kind of latent athletic talent or ability. He just hasn't put it all together. And that's not, doesn't mean he can't. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean he can't.
I think it was Jerry, maybe it was Scott, who said the Mariners were not convinced this is a mechanical thing, and I think that spurred a lot of concern. But I feel like that lines up with what we all suspect, which is that it's mostly just mental. And I think that's pretty clear because when he hits the ball, he hits the crap out of it. And we mentioned before that we didn't think, when he was swinging through 93 mile per hour fastballs, it was more of a timing issue. And that comes from like a sense of self-doubt, right? Than it does from a skill set thing, especially considering how much he was hitting 93 mile per hour fastballs in AAA.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
Scott saying that they demoted him essentially after that 4-pitch strikeout jives with that, because it doesn't matter if your mechanics are broken if you're not swinging, right? Like that's kind of beside the point. And I do think that we should mention Scott was pretty clear about that. They liked the at bats he had that series. They did not like that pinch hit at bat, and we were all in the Slack talking when that at bat happened, and we didn't like it either. There was some consensus that he probably should have been sent down after that, and he was. So that's if we can see it from 1,000 miles away, like it's probably how it is. So
it's also kind of tough to play armchair manager because we don't know what everything is like. But it's not a great look when you're platooning him. Like you kind of have to give him the everyday at bats, even if he's not playing well. If your thought is to develop him and to instill a sense of confidence in him, because if you think that he's got an issue that's mental, then sitting him against lefties is not probably going to fix that.
Well, anything else on Jared, or I guess even in a larger picture, the outfield before we talk pitching?
I'm just happy Winker's kind of turning it around.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he what was it? I think the last 11 games he has 10 hits, and it must be last 12 he has 11, or not 11 hits, but a hit in 11 of those games. I do find it surprising that Jerry says that the issues aren't mechanical, which I suppose makes sense. I think it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, and it's hard to know how much of it is what. I'll definitely say that some of it is mental. But I also think that some of it is mechanical. That I don't know how to describe it without, showing video, but that setup that he had, the little, when he came, when he debuted, the little rock and hunched over kind of stance, like I don't think that was good for making hard contact. Maybe making contact with the ball, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. I am excited for him to kind of get a breather down and ML or AAA and see how he comes back. But yeah, I do find those comments really interesting.
So based on what we've said here, who do you think comes back first, Jared or Kyle Lewis?
I kind of think Kyle.
Oh God, yeah. Well, we know for a fact the answer to that question is Kyle Lewis because
They could
he
option
started
him after his rehab assignment's over.
that is technically true. Can I conspiracy theory pause it for a second here?
Oh,
My
please
belief is
do.
that what they're really going to do with him, if he gives the okay, is they're going to play him, and if he plays his way back onto the injured list, that's it. Like, is really kind of, like, at a certain point, it's like shit or get off the pot, and what they've essentially done is they've rehabbed him as much as they can. He's on their roster. They gotta try it. You know what I mean? It's like it kind of feels like it would be insane to do all of this and then just not give him a chance to play. If he can DH, okay, but a mercurial recovery, not bouncing back properly. I took a walk last night. I didn't talk about this in the Slack, but I took a walk last night, went out into the woods, smoked a doobie as I am one to do. But I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about I think like I should probably mentally move on from Kyle Lewis at this stage, right? And he's my favorite, so that hurts. Sorry to tangent here for a second. This is my Kyle Lewis is probably done despair moment, but I I am not optimistic based on what I've heard. So but I am really excited not to have Steve Souza in the outfield anymore. So whoever it is that comes to take that spot, I will love.
Can I talk about this real quick?
You
I
may.
know we're trying to get off the Jared
Please
subject, but
do.
this is just yeah. So you're trying to win a baseball game, and you send down Jared. Fine, but you have to have a better backup plan than Steven Souza. You have to have a player who is clearly better than Kelnick. And uh, Evan, you and I've done this a couple of times when he strikes out looking. We're like, well, Jared could have done that. And he hits the ball with the authority of a toothpick. It's just like so
It's really
pathetic.
bad. Like he's tapped it back to the pitcher multiple times. I've seen him.
It's Kawasakian is what it is.
It's what it looks like when I hit a baseball. Like when you when you see a regular scrub at the park swing as hard as they can and knock it like 3 feet in front of the plate. Same deal.
I was like, "Who's Kawasaki?"
So
It took me forever.
Munenori Kawasaki,
Yeah,
who
yeah,
hit I
yeah,
think 2 balls into the outfield as a Mariner or something like that.
yeah. Really?
Sounds about right.
It was not good, but I mean, he was a lovable player, but he had no authority behind the swing. But
Good lord.
regardless, this is kind of what we talk about, like, right? We were talking about this before the podcast about how Dipoto was talking about making the lineup more ominous, right? But there was no depth in place for the pitching or for the hitting, and so far, knock on wood, thankfully the pitching has been mostly okay in terms of staying on the field. But there's very little plan there either. But it's now evident that there was really no plan anywhere for injury. And this is
Mm.
why teams like the Padres do what they do when they sign like 3 middle infielders who are all major league quality, is they bank on something like this happening. And you can't get into a scenario where like Jared underperforms and Kyle's still hurt and Haniger got hurt again, and now you're like, well, shit, there's the season. Like, that's kind of what it feels like is happening. Because Haniger was going to be a reliable bat, and they banked on Kelnick and Julio being good right away. And we talked about this in the spring, how we were kind of uncomfortable with how much they were leaning on those two being sure things. And so far, Julio has been. And even still, we're not even at 500.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's, of course, a lot of variables that go into that. But it's just very frustrating that they didn't have any sort of backup plan. And, it didn't have to be acquiring a Seiya Suzuki or a very obvious starting caliber outfielder, but it could have been like a Manuel Margot, or it could have been a capable backup who could start and not embarrass you. It's just very peculiar that they didn't really address that. Like, Souza was their backup plan, and Souza had 40 major league games to his name before the season started. None of them were good.
Is that it?
So that can't.
Souza hasn't been good in like 4 years, for reference. It's been a while.
That's true. He did have like one season, I think, where he was decent.
Yeah. He was like a 5 WAR player or something. It was with the Rays. It was wild.
Yeah, you're right. But regardless, that can't be your backup plan. And I guess like maybe Trammell was the backup plan, but then he went down. It's just
correct. Yeah. That actually hurts
Yeah.
a lot more in retrospect than I think we realized at the time, because at the time the Mariners had outfielders. They are light on those currently.
Yeah.
And I've been one to say, like, look, the Mariners late May last year were 21-26, and they were batting Jack Mayfield and Jacob Nottingham every day, and we were all sitting there like,
Oh
God, this really
God.
sucks. And
Oh
then they
God.
turned it around. So obviously the same thing could happen, but we're counting on like a miraculous late summer run to get back to where they were last year, and that's unlikely to happen twice. But they won a series against the Mets. This game against the Blue Jays is still going, and technically we could look real stupid if they win that game. But
I'll take that L. I'll wear it
yeah.
if the Mariners would like to win. um,
Anyway, that's my tangent. I think everybody knew that. It's just I had to say it.
yeah. Mikey, do you have anything else, or do you want to talk a little bit of George Kirby?
Oh, let's talk about Kirby.
Yeah. Kirby's real fun. So Kirby's had 2 starts. Mikey, second start obviously was a little rougher, but missed some bats the first start, got some strikeouts, looked pretty sharp. What do the numbers say underneath?
Oh boy, I'll pull up the numbers and, and what they say underneath. But I mean, just to speak more generally until then, I think kind of what he showed was, a huge departure, obviously, from what Matt Brash didn't show, was that, even when he doesn't have, the bat missing stuff, he's able to kind of grit through things because, he keeps the ball in the zone. He doesn't walk anyone. And has he given up a home run? He's given up one, right? Anyone know?
George Kirby, yeah, he gave up a home
Mhm.
run in his second start. Yeah.
Okay. Then yeah. So like I don't know. It's it's definitely like I said with Brash, like when he was out there, it looked like an experiment. Like it looked like a guy that like or is or was a reliever, and they're like, let's just we're losing. We've lost 100 games. Let's just see what happens. Um, I've been really, encouraged by what I've seen from Kirby. I think the troubling thing is that he doesn't, have a secondary that he throws for a ton of strikes. Like his slider has a 5% swinging strike percentage. His changeup is almost 17%, but doesn't have as many, he doesn't get as many called strikes with it because he doesn't throw it. Well, he throws in the zone a fair amount, but they're lagging pretty far behind his his fastball. I've seen people throw 55 grade, 60 grade on sometimes it's a slider, sometimes it's his curveball. I've always been kind of thought of them as 40 to 50 grade pitches, and I think that's really been the case thus far, is that he doesn't necessarily have feel for them. It seems like his slider is the pitch that he feels the most comfortable throwing. But the shape's not amazing, and it seems like the feel for the changeup and curveball isn't there. But the more that he's able to use the changeup, I think the better he'll be. So, for now, I'm just super pumped that his swinging strike percentage on his fastball is like 18%, 34% CSW. We do need to see, him kind of take a step forward with at least one of his secondaries.
Yeah, I was very impressed. I mean, so one thing struck me right away about him in his first start is that he did not look nearly as nervous as Logan Gilbert did in his first start, where I don't know if you guys remember, but I don't think he threw a non-fastball until like the third inning. He was just like fastball, fastball. And you could tell because every like second or third pitch, he was just like gathering himself and taking like a deep breath. And sometimes he needed like 2 or 3 between pitches where and that's just like a mental thing. He was super nervous, but Kirby was like throwing sliders and off speed pitches like right away and locating them well. And I guess that's kind of his thing. They're different pitchers, right? So Logan Gilbert's thing is deception, and Kirby's thing is stuff, or not stuff. Sorry, command. And
And
so
stuff.
for
He
him
throws
to,
98.
well, yeah,
Let's not shortchange the man.
But they have different approaches. So for him to have good command from the get go is, I guess, not as surprising because that's his calling card. But the scouting reports on him have been that he is like a major league ready mid rotation starter, and that's kind of what he looks like right now, which is really a relief based on the fact that Brash didn't pan out, and once again they didn't really have a great backup plan for that happening, except for Kirby. So thankfully that's working. I don't know if you guys saw, but Brash threw 2 scoreless relief innings the other day with 4 strikeouts. So that's pretty cool. I wonder if we see him sooner rather than later.
He did have, I'm trying to think, I think it was last night, 2 clean innings. I think 5 strikeouts and 3 walks maybe, which isn't as encouraging.
3 walks. Yikes.
Something like that. I think I said it on the pod before. I just wonder if he's throwing with max effort as a starter.
Who's that, Kirby or Brash?
Brash. Why does that change as a reliever? Like maybe there's some sort of mindset, change, or maybe it's just moving to the stretch is something that helps him tighten it up and be more consistent. But I just kind of wonder, like, why would he's not going to throw harder? I doubt that. If he's throwing with the same effort, why would the command
improve?
Bump up at all? Yeah.
That's been my question. Well, I was going to ask you that, Mikey, in regards to relievers in general. Why isn't necessarily that you put bad command starters in the bullpen? How does that work better for them?
Well, I think the thing is that the margin of error kind of so widens. Yeah, I guess like they have more margin of error. So like someone like, I don't know, I guess Brash or like Denelson Lamet or you Darvish, whoever, if they were to go to the bullpen, their stuff would tick up because they're throwing harder. Like their fastballs are being thrown harder, and they should have more movement, on their secondaries as well. They also don't have to see batters 2 to 3 times through. So I think it's like several fold. But outside of velo, being kind of the mediating factor in terms of stuff ticking up, I think it's really just how often hitters see you, because we know that the third time through is very significant. The second isn't so much. And I think it is sort of a mindset thing. You're just balls to the wall and you just go until you can't anymore. Whereas starters have to kind of pace themselves out. You sometimes you have long breaks. I don't know. I think it's a really mental thing. But
in the case of Brash too, could you say theoretically it could be like damage mitigation? Because part of the issue with him being a starter is that if you need him to get length, if you need him to pitch 5 innings and he can't do it, it's detrimental. If he's coming out of the bullpen and he gives up 3 hits and he just can't find the zone, you pull him. You know what I mean? Like the investment is so much lower that there's less to lose. But I think Durs asked the question, what is it that makes low command guys work in the bullpen? I think I would say they kind of don't. That guys who don't have the command to work don't work. You know what I mean? You weren't here last week when I made the Dan Cortez comparison, and like people want to throw things.
I did actually listen to your guys' podcast for that.
But you get what I mean, right? Like sometimes guys can throw 98 and they have this nasty stuff, but they're just never going to harness it and they don't make it. So people don't want to hear that about Matt Brash because he's young and he's cool and exciting. He needs a tweak.
Dan Cortez, right? Who was traded for? Who the Mariners get him from?
No, this is the Zarenzik era.
Good God, I don't fucking know.
Who was it, Durs? I'm not gonna cheat and look it up.
Holbert Cabrera.
I'm fairly certain it was Yuniesky Betancourt.
Gross.
Was it? I'm not gonna look that up now because I don't want anything to do with that.
It was let's see, Derek Saito and Dan Cortez for Yuniesky Betancourt.
Good.
Oh God. All right. Anything else about Kirby, or should we talk Robbie Ray?
I do want to say one thing that's really funny because we just talked about him, but Steve Souza just got pinch hit for Mike Ford.
Yes. Fuck Steve Souza.
Oh my God.
Steve Souza.
Oh, and then Ford walked. Let's go, Mike Ford.
Mike Ford is the spitting image of Dan Vogelback, and I don't know how he made it back to this place, but I guess I'm just rolling with it for now. Mikey,
It's the Jacob Nottingham of last year. We gave him away, got him back, and now he's starting every day. Sorry,
Giants,
Robbie Ray.
man.
Let's talk about Robert Raymond.
Yeah, so Robbie Ray appears to have his velocity back, struck out tons of people over tons of Mets specifically over the weekend. Also had his now Mariners atypical rocky inning going on. He gave up 4 runs that inning, 5 runs. It was bad.
It was 5, I think, but then they kept him out there, and he got like 2 scoreless innings after that. So that was cool.
Mikey, besides the velocity tick up, have you seen anything else? Maybe, swinging strikes, anything that indicates that, some of that dominance is returning to his abilities?
Yeah. I mean, his velo is back to where it was more like late last year, which still isn't 95, but 94.3 is getting pretty close. What I'm encouraged about is, he's kind of taking measures to get better. One thing that I've really noticed in the past couple games in particular, I think maybe the past 2 or 3, the slider was already in April at, pretty all-time high. In May, he's throwing it 43% of the time and his fastball 55. Part of that is because he's basically just not throwing his changeup and curveball. But I'm still, kind of encouraged by it because we talked a lot about like what does it look like for Robbie Ray to get back if the velo doesn't come back. One of those things is throwing the slider more, which he's done. So I think in terms of, barrel mitigation and throwing more strikes, I think it's kind of it helps to throw the slider more. That means that you're throwing the fastball less, and that also means that theoretically the fastball should play up. So I just really hope that we get 94 mile per hour Robbie Ray through the rest of the season. And I'm just really encouraged by the slider being used as a weapon, like really it never has before, and it's looked pretty nasty in some games. And I will say, I don't know if this is a career high, but did he pitch yesterday? 2 days ago. He had 27 whiffs, which I tweeted about. I think that would be like in the top 15 of all starting pitchers outings last year. So like, that feels like he's back in some way.
I was just trying to pull up this to see if it was true. I saw a tweet that said that Robbie Ray is the career major league leader in K per 9. Is that true?
I know it at least was.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Sure hasn't felt that way, but that's cool.
I mean, part of it is because he had a walk problem before, and the more that you walk people, the more opportunities you have to strike people out. So it's kind of like a multifaceted thing. But it is really interesting nonetheless. And it's also why I don't use K per 9.
It's strikeout rate that you want, right? Or whiff rate.
Yeah. Strikeout rate.
I will say him being good is like paramount for the Mariners. Not only this year, but for the next couple of years, because they made a massive financial investment in him for 5 years. And we kind of are, I think at least me, I'm already like banking those last 2 years as like lefty specialist years. Like him being paid $20 million to be a lefty specialist, like that's probably just what's going to happen the last couple of years. But we said the same thing about Nelson Cruz, and he ended up being good, like not only through the last 2 years of his deal, but beyond. But him being good this year, next year is pretty crucial to the Mariners try to be good. And go ahead.
Yeah, it was a career high for him. 27 whiffs, up from 25, which was almost on the same exact date of 2021. So yeah, that's encouraging. A career high in swings and misses. I will take that. We all take that.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Again, I think him and Gilbert make a solid 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
And if Kirby can be a good 3, I think I'm fine with Marco and Flexen being a 4 and 5 pitchers. I think that's
it's
like a fine
least,
rotation.
Oh my god, it's the least sexy lineup ever. I should look up like I'm gonna query or rotation. Sorry,
I don't know. I don't think it's.
I didn't say at the beginning of the episode, but I'm like, I wouldn't say sick, but I wouldn't say not sick. I'm gonna cue up.
You're not sick, but you're not well. Sorry.
Exactly.
What's I'm not crazy. I'm just a little unwell.
Oh. I'm gonna pull up ball and play percentage because I bet the Mariners rank really not great by their starters.
You don't think Ray and Gilbert are a sexy 1-2?
Not really. They're like 19th. That's not that bad. But let me queue up foul balls with that because yeah. Yeah,
Robbie Ray's an interesting dude. He feels like he'd be a fun guy to have a beer with. Am I wrong about that? Like, it's just the vibe I get.
I mean, he's an anti-vaxxer, so there's that.
Exactly. He seems like he'd be fun at an axe party or something.
I think
like
I didn't think we were going to talk about this, but I can't believe there were only 2. I mean, I'm glad, but I'm just shocked that it was just him and Steck.
Boo, Steckenrider.
Oh, it's not Frazier?
No, Frazier's batting right now. Actually, just got a single.
Oh. All right. Well, I guess not watching the game.
I'm shocked, actually.
I'm just watching game day. I'm not watching the game, but anyway.
The Mariners currently have the bases loaded, but are down 1-3 in the top of the 7th. So
this play-by-play is great for people that are listening to the show tomorrow.
God damn.
I'm just glad that we scored any runs because if we had been shut out on the day Yusei Kikuchi pitched, I would have been very upset. And I don't think he gave up the run, so I'm still a little upset, frankly. But, progress.
I really wish he was good.
Like I kind of had a little bit of FOMO watching him pitch for someone else, but that contract wouldn't have allowed us. Well, would not. This is air quotes. Would not have allowed us to get Eugenio.
I got accused of like bootlicking and like twerking for owners.
Yeah, Mikey, noted bootlicker.
What happened?
It's when I tweeted about the John Heyman Cano Kelenic trade, and I was like, this is really weird framing considering Kelenic is like 500 PAs into his career and Cano is not good, is on a different team, in fact. And the Mariners probably saved, $100 million. So that's where he was like, oh, you're licking the owner's boots, whatever. Which, like, I kind of get, but A, have you ever read one of my tweets or listened to me or read an article from me?
I thought you were about to say, have you ever tasted the boot, though?
It's fucking delicious.
I feel like everyone who spends any amount of time looking at your tweets would definitely get the impression that you are a certified bootlicker.
I'm a professional bootlicker. But I was just like, I mean, I get it. And I understand that the Mariners didn't do really much of anything with that money. But it's still impressive nonetheless. And it's still, in general, a positive nonetheless. So I don't know. I mean, whatever. I think I ended up blocking. It was Ron.
Why does every single person who talks about this trade forget the fact that the Mets got a Hall of Fame reliever out of it?
Who still plays for them, even though Cano does not. We should
stipulate. Who's still like very good, like obviously the best player in that trade so far.
Do you say Hall of Fame?
Potentially.
He debuted
Would
when he
you-
was 19, right? He was a baby.
Well, he wasn't that young.
20?
Okay, let's have this discourse. If any reliever that's active right now is going to make the Hall of Fame, besides I guess Craig Kimbrell, who would it be? Hader
Jansen.
probably. Jansen.
Really?
He's a
Relievers
generational reliever.
never make the Hall of Fame. This is a hard question because the threshold is like they have to pitch forever. If you're just a reliever, you have to pitch for 20 years to make the Hall of Fame and
That's
be
fair.
good most of that time. Like
I mean,
don't-
Andrew Miller doesn't count.
yeah,
It's
he
Jansen.
sort of is
I'm
okay.
looking at WAR total. He has more than Chapman. He has more than Kimbrell.
Chapman would be my answer, unfortunately, and I don't like that. Fuck.
I think it's easily Jansen. Yeah, Kimbrell really is like kind of a shoe-in.
Schmitty, Werben, Yegerman, Jansen.
Anyways,
He is number one.
he is number one. Pat Venditti. No.
The legendary
no.
Pat Venditti, switch pitcher.
The legendary.
The
I mean,
amphibious.
Ken Giles has had an almost equal career to Edwin Diaz. So I'm kind of
Seattle
inclined to
Mariner,
think,
Ken Giles.
yes. So I'm kind of inclined to think that no, he's not going to be a Hall of Famer.
Speaking of Ken
That's
Giles, we should talk about what's going on with our bullpen and our 28th ranked pitching right now.
Nice segue.
Wait, no,
Since-
seriously, what is happening with Ken Giles? Is he okay?
He tore the finger ligament, right? Sprained it.
Fractured. Yeah.
Then
Oh,
he got
God.
something else though, right? He injured something else, and that put him on the 60-day IL. Am I wrong about that?
No, I think that was procedural.
I feel like the Mariners are destined to have like two players at all times for which we have just no idea what their medical situation is. Like between Kyle
Ominous.
Lewis and Mitch Haniger before, and Evan White, and previously Justin Dunn.
In all fairness, we know what Mitch Haniger's status is. His status is that he tripped over his own feet and injured himself.
Yes, but I mean when he had the other thing going on.
Okay.
Oh,
So almost 3 weeks ago, Giles got cleared to resume throwing. Basically, he'll need to complete a spring training-esque progression before he's deemed ready to head out on a rehab assignment. So that feels like 2 months almost. Not 2 months, but that's like a month and a half.
All-Star
like
game time.
I feel like if the Mariners are bad, he could get Austin Adams, where he's like traded while hurt.
But he hasn't pitched
True.
since 2020, and I think that was like an inning. It was 3 innings. Again, I don't give a shit, but well, no, the Mariners gave him $7 million. Who cares?
Wasn't that for 2
2023
years too?
club option. Yeah. So they have a club option on
They
him
gave
after
2
this
plus
year.
1? Wow.
Yeah. Good for everyone.
It's gonna be really funny when he
Everyone
never pitches for the Mariners ever. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Mikey, I want to know what you think about the bullpen though, because my impression this is what's skewing me. This is what's skewing my analysis of the Mariners on the 2 podcasts I am now on. One is that hitting is down across the league, so no matter how bad the Mariners look, they have still technically been good, and it really frustrates me. 2 is that the pitching has given up what I would describe as a pretty normal amount of runs, right? Like in a regular non-dead ball year, the way that the starters in particular have pitched would have been fine. Like it doesn't seem like it's been that out of whack. It just actually happens to be because offense is so down across the league. So what appears to be pretty much fine, kind of like maybe 16th to 18th ranked pitching to me has actually been ranked basically, second, third, dead last in the league. And the bullpen has been kind of a Jekyll and Hyde act across the board, other than Seawald, who we love, and we love chirping at Mets fans. But what do you think of the way the bullpen has performed so far? And I guess particularly we should probably talk about Castillo, who's been really up and down, Steckenrider, who's been really up and down, and Penn Murphy, who's been a pleasant surprise, are probably the highlights right now.
Yeah, it's really all over the place. And we had a conversation about this this morning, especially between me and John Trupin in the Slack. But I mean, I think I talked about it the other week. There some guys that I'm really excited about, like Munoz. Aside from an elevated walk rate and a couple too many home runs, has been really quite good, especially for a rookie. And I also kind of think that the home runs are noise, and that the walk rate will quiet down a little bit. I also kind of think Penn Murphy is legit. Like, I don't think he's given up a walk or home run yet over 7-ish innings. That slider's like, he throws like 89, 90, but that slider is sick. He throws sidearm. I think what it comes down to is a lot of this is just, it's so trite, but just the volatility of relievers. There's not a ton that makes me think Diego Castillo's broken, but he hasn't been good. He hasn't been someone that I'm like, I want him in this situation. And last year he had a career high K percentage, like by far, like a kind of career-ish season. By Expo, but career season. So I think it's just, when the pendulum swings too, it also swings fro. I think we'll see guys that will kind of bounce back, like Castillo, and I think Paul Sewald will continue to be dominant. So I don't know. In some ways, I'm like, it's so obvious that this is the way that it was going to happen. When you have a career year, in terms of luck for your hitters and kind of for relievers, it doesn't make it more likely that that's going to be the opposite the next year, but it does make it difficult when your talent level wasn't actually as high as your performance level. So like Steck might be broken. I haven't taken a closer look into it. But it's just like, you had Gravemans, you had Seawalds, you had Stecks and Sadlers. Now you kind of just have Seawald. You could maybe argue for Murphy or Munoz, but I think it's really him right now.
Well, or God, what's his name? Swanson.
Oh yeah. Mikey forgot about Eric Swanson.
I have a love-hate relationship with him.
So I kind of I understand that you're saying that like the Mariners don't have like as many elite relievers as they had last year, but they definitely still have a good number of like good relievers. I think this is still a good bullpen.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, let me pull up some numbers, but like,
I do kind of wish they would just make Sewald the closer, but
no,
I don't know what the resistance to making Sewald the closer is, because even last year Steckenrider was the closer.
I think his role right now is good. They're 19th for reliever WAR, so they're not good. Let's see what they are for K minus walk percentage. Third. Yeah, I think it's the home runs. I think that's really, like, a lot of the relievers are really interesting and good in theory, but just haven't been. Like, I think the perfect example is Festa. Like, I was looking, I think today or yesterday, his home runs per 9 is like 3.25. He's missing bats and he's throwing majority sliders, but he's also giving up a lot of home runs in an environment that's knocking home runs, down, fly balls down. I don't know. I want to know who these quality relievers are that you speak of.
I would consider Sewald to be a quality reliever. I would consider Swanson and Munoz to be good relievers. Okay. I would consider. I think Murphy has the potential to, but we haven't seen enough for me to label him as such completely yet. Same thing. I will Festa.
Label him as such.
Okay.
So mostly you're saying that they're just hurt.
Yeah. Well, I also just think regression is due for like I think Castillo is an above average reliever who has the potential to be really great at times. He's very Rodney-esque, right? Where like there are times where he could just be like absolutely dominant, but there are also times where he just makes you want to rip your hair out. But I guess that's most relievers. But Rodney
Yeah.
is what we attribute that experience to.
It was an experience, man.
I think when it comes to understanding the bullpen this year as it compares to last year too, and maybe if you wanted a ray of sunshine in this, it's that our bullpen was not immediately good last year. Paul Sewald didn't get here until May. He was called up with Logan. We started the year with Keenan Middleton, who obviously was a disaster on all fronts, and Ramirez. I'm blanking on his
God.
first name.
Keenan Middleton.
No disrespect to everyone who came before me.
Yeah.
White Mills just gave up
That's-
a lot of runs.
Yeah, it's not going well for the Mariners.
Oh,
but
really? Great. Love that for us. Okay, I'm turning this off.
The thing with the bullpen is that there's no reinforcements coming. I mean, Wyatt Mills is already here. Penn Murphy's already here. They were supposed to kind of be the guys in waiting, and they're already here. I agree with what you said, Durs, about the Fernando Rodney comparison, but specifically as it relates to like the larger Mariners bullpen, we have a bunch of really loud stuff guys with bad command and control, and those guys are going to be fungible appearance to appearance, pitch to pitch, but in a bigger sense year to year, right? Like guys like that sometimes put it all together for 6 months at a time and have an amazing year and then just aren't that good again. Frankly, Johan kind of may have had a career year last year, and this year was our worst pitcher and got DFA'd. So it's like,
Which
Rip.
the fact that Cleveland picked him up is a red flag to me.
yeah,
Anytime Cleveland
No.
wants one of your pitchers, same thing with the Giants. If the Giants want one of your pitchers, it's game over, right?
They developed some guys.
Who?
Bieber.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying it's a red flag to us if
Oh.
Cleveland wants one of your pitchers, because
Oh,
they
okay,
are
I
good
see.
at developing pitchers.
All right. I mean, yeah. Well, Savali hasn't been great, even though I just wrote about him and think that he could be. And Plesac has
very
been
ordinary.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Eli Morgan never turned in anything, and I mean, yeah, but I guess maybe that was an over celebrated or celebrated too early. Cleveland on being good at developing pitchers, but
Yeah.
anyway,
But they're not.
Okay, Mikey, here's my question for you. Right now, who would you rather have? Diego Castillo or JT Chagua?
Oh, Diego Castillo.
Okay.
Easy. Is Chagua even like a thing?
what
He's still
happened to
with the Rays.
Shaggy? Okay,
I mean, he just wasn't. You say he's on the Reds?
the Rays.
Oh, Rays. He just wasn't good once he moved to the Rays. Part of it, I think, was sicky stuff. Yeah, I think he's just not actually that great.
He's kind of like Steckenrider.
I mean, I think Diego Castillo does too, but like, his fastball's not very good, and he throws a gyro slider, which I've actually stopped thinking are great pitch. Like if you look at Stuff Plus models, they don't really love gyro sliders, which I think Castillo definitely throws, but yeah, his is a gyro slider too, but his is a little weirder. And he throws a really like heavy seam shifted wake sinker. By the way, I'm super excited. I should have it coming out tomorrow, but I have an article coming out for BP talking about how we're talking about seam shifted wake wrong. I think it'll be pretty illuminating for a lot of people. So
Okay.
that is a thing. Yeah.
Very exciting.
Promote yourself, King.
Yeah.
I will.
Do you have anything coming out with 538 in the near future?
I haven't thought of anything. I mean, generally, like the bigger stories. Yeah, I've done 2 so far.
2, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, anything that you could see being pitched to like ESPN is something I might pitch. is the way that I kind of think about it.
Right. It's
I
like
was thinking about a deep dive into Asher Wojciechowski, but that's just me personally.
Perfect. Then
Is that because you share a last name?
Almost.
Close enough. Close enough.
His name is actually written in the language of the homeland. Mine is anglicized, American anglicized specifically.
Wait, so what's
But
your
that's-
last name not then?
I don't know. My great grandparents came through Ellis Island, and there's 36 letters in the Hungarian alphabet and only 26 in English. So whatever they said to the guy at Ellis Island, he said okay and wrote it down phonetically, which is why it's spelled
Damn.
that way.
My last name also features a letter that doesn't exist in the English alphabet.
The
Jostad.
O.
Yeah, it's supposed to have a
Jostad.
slash to the O. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
See, we're very diverse on this podcast.
Well, okay, I wouldn't go that far.
All right. I mean, yeah, I guess all three of our last names have changed due to immigrating to
What was
the
yours?
US. I don't really know. My grandpa kind of tells like these. There's like lore kind of about our last name, and he has different stories, or did have different stories. Supposedly, because one of my cousins has done kind of ancestry work. It's supposedly Aniceto or Aniceto. Aniceto, yeah. Because there are people in our family tree with that last name, and we know that it's changed. So, yeah, I think
I joke that me and Drew Rasmussen are cousins because I think my like 2 times great grandfather's last name was Rasmussen.
You mean, or as Dave Sims says, Rasmussen.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
It's
excruciating to listen to.
I don't understand it, but yeah.
Well, we're at an hour, so I guess we should probably wrap it for today. The only other non-baseball question I wanted to ask you guys is: did either of you guys listen to the Kendrick album? What were your immediate thoughts?
I really, really liked 2 of the songs, but have just read some stuff about it and just experienced it myself where I was like, this album feels really problematic.
It's complicated. It's complicated.
I heard this. I didn't listen to the album, but I heard the stories about the words.
There's a song where I think he has 2 trans relatives where he dead names them and misgenders them, and then there's one that's essentially where he and his partner are like verbally abusing each other, like are in a domestic dispute, you know?
Yeah, that song, by the way, if you haven't heard that song, listen to the clean version because it is so funny. It's just like random sounds every once in a while and like, yeah, because like they're mostly
Really?
just swearing and like shouting epithets and stuff, so that's all cut out. It's just it's wild.
Geez.
But yeah, conceptually it reminds me of like one of the earlier Nas albums, or even I don't even know, like an early. It reminds me actually a little bit of the Marshall Mathers LP, given the way he arranges it with the skits and stuff, and with like the abuse themes. Frankly,
there's also that Kodak Black narrates it, and he has you know, some homophobic and I think
he pled guilty to rape, actually.
Okay, that's what it was. That's way worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just, I mean, I think so I'm someone who can't separate like music from the artist, and like sometimes, you know, it's like an X song comes on, I'm like, well, I'm not gonna run out of the room.
You know what's really unfortunate?
Yeah.
Is I had just declared to like my girlfriend that I really liked DaBaby, and then all that stuff came out about him in the comments that he made. Literally a week before he went to that concert and said that really awful stuff.
It's your fault, dude.
I was like, oh, DaBaby's really cool, and then it's like, oh no, he's really not.
It's been a weird week for rappers like that in general, because DaBaby's being looked at for federal crimes, which he admits to in several of his like very popular songs. There's that line about like committing murder in 3D IMAX or whatever, and like he's under investigation for that. So that's a whole can of worms. And then obviously Young Thug will never see the light of day again.
Oh yeah, he's done.
This is now the rap podcast. Young Thug got arrested on a RICO
he was in a
charge.
gang, right?
Yeah. YSL is very much a gang. non-baseball stuff. But I just wanted to say I like the Kendrick album. I agree with Mikey. It's not for me. You know what I mean? Like, just as a Caucasian American man, I understand that like the context of it is really not directed at me. It's not for me. It's not about me. It's not meant to communicate anything for my experience. I'm a music producer, so I really like the beats on some of it in particular. Like in 95 has a sick ass beat. So
yeah, that's one of the songs I really liked. And maybe I can listen to some of it and feel okay about it. But I think that's also kind of just removing the art from its context too. So yeah, I'm not someone who can really experience it the same. So yeah, I don't know if I'll listen to it again.
I don't know if I will either. It was the whole thing cohesively is a little sleepy, I think, is kind of the way I felt about it on second listen. I was like, like for all it just was kind of boring, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't have to love everything.
Right.
But anyways, we'll wrap it there for today. No controversy. The Mariners are getting their butts kicked, but I'm gonna go get dinner. So I've been Evan. You can find me on Twitter at Evan James Audio. You can find Michael on Twitter at Kuya Mikey. I said Michael, which is what I have written here. I never say Michael. You can find Anders on Twitter at Anders Jorstad. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts, wherever it is you stream. Additionally, please support the podcast on Patreon by going to patreon.com/neversunnyin Seattle. I will have the link posted at the end here if you are watching the video on YouTube or Spotify. Thanks for listening. Go Mariners. Please win.